Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm surprised it's taken me this long to feature this camera, because it is probably the 135mm SLR that I would keep if I had to get rid of all of the other ones. And this is of course the Olympus, and it's an OM2N. The OM2 was launched in 75 and this one came out in 79, so this is celebrating its 40th birthday. Slightly updated version as compared to the original OM2, but yeah, very nice, quite a small camera, and not as light as you'd think actually, because they are metal. Top plate and bottom plate are metal, chassis metal, back doors metal. It's got a lot of metal on it. This one's got the shoe core on. Unfortunately, I think you can see that this shoe core is cracked as well, which they all tend to do where they get over tightened. They tend to crack along these edges. So if you can find an uncracked shoe core, treasure it like gold dust. This does have the also rather rare Olympus hot shoe cover on it as well. Doesn't really have the right lens on it. It's got an Auto S lens on it. I personally recommend the lenses that have got made in Japan on them. They seem to be the better of the 50mm lenses, but they're all pretty good. There's no real outstanding lenses in the OM range, but they're all pretty good, and they're all fairly consistent. And judging by the prices and the desirability of them, they do seem to be fairly desirable. As I said before, 35mm SLR. This is an aperture preferred camera. I've shown you quite a lot of shutter priority cameras, and the reason for that simply is that the shutters are mechanical. This one has an electronic shutter, and with the introduction of electronic shutters we started to see more and more aperture priority cameras, which I think by and large were more favoured. Shutter priority is great for sports and action photographers, but for the creative types and for normal everyday use, aperture priority is probably the best way to go. Now, the thing the OM2 are really renowned for is the metering system. If I remove the lens, this camera actually has two metering systems in it. There are three types of cell widely used in metering systems. The one we've seen quite a lot of is the selenium cells. These are the ones that don't need batteries and generate electricity depending on the amount of light that's falling on them. That was followed by cadmium sulfide CDS cells, and then we had the later SPD silicon photodiodes. The advantage of the silicon photodiode system is that they react far more quickly to light changes than do either selenium or the CDS cells. But in these cameras there's two CDS cells in the prism, and those power the needle display that the user sees, but there's also two silicon cells housed in the bottom, and they're looking back, they're not looking forwards, they're looking backwards at the mirror. Now, in photography generally, even to this day, we meter before we take the picture, but this has a slightly different approach in that it meters during the exposure. And the way it does this, this camera hasn't got any batteries in it, so it will lock up. And if you look on the front of the shutter curtains, you can see this pattern on there. And it's this pattern that these cells are reading the light from. You can see where the cells are housed. There's one this side and one this side. And they read above a 60th of a second. It reads off of the curtains, this front curtains. So this helps it calculate the exposure. A 60th of a second and below, it actually reads off the reflection from the film. So this camera reads during the exposure. But the one before is the one in the prism that gives you a rough indication. During the actual exposure, it's these two down here, and they're fast enough to register changes in light during exposure, and that led to flash exposure being automated, and it can actually read the flash off the film surface itself. So this camera meters during the exposure. Even today, I can't think of any other cameras that meter during the exposure. They tend to meter before the exposure. This was the first one to do it. It was the OM2. Like I say, this is a slightly revised version. This has longer timings, whereas the original OM2 went to 60 seconds. This goes to 120 seconds or 2 minutes, which is quite a long time, through to 1,000th of a second. Very simple camera. On the front here, these have the MD designation for the motor drive, and the motor drive coupling is missing on this one because it normally has a winder attached to it, but that's where it mechanically attaches to the camera. We have a PC port up here which is switchable between bulbs and flash. It does have a manual mode, so we still have the shutter speed dial around the throat of the lens, so we can see the shutter speeds there. One's in blue, 60. This is the flash sync, so it's obviously a horizontal curtain. And B, also quite useful, quite a nice thing to do. Nicomats are similar in that respect. We have a self-timer lever down here, pretty standard in the way that it operates. This is the rewind switch. Rather than being on the bottom, it's on the front of these lug straps, obviously, each side. The mirror's locked up because there's no battery in it. You'll quite often, or you used to see a lot of these on eBay where it says, oh, it's locked up, doesn't work, can't wind it on or anything like that. The original OM2s are a bit harder to reset. It's down here, but on these ones, if you just push it up to the reset position, the mirror falls back into place and you can wind it on, but it will lock up the next time you press the shutter. On the top, we have a self-resetting frame counter in the corner here. We have the film advance lever. Should be nice and silky smooth. If it feels at all rough, then it's a high mileage camera. The other thing to look out for is markings on this black part here. A lot of people taking these apart think these two slots are to put a lens spanner in. They're not. You just take the whole thing off with a lens rubber. So if you see any damage on this black surface, you know that someone's been into the camera. Shutter release, threaded for a cable release, not lockable unfortunately. This is the exposure compensation dial, so quite a measly 2 stops under or over exposure, and also you set the ASA or ISO now. Here you lift it up and if you twist it, that's the exposure compensation. But if you lift it up, you can set the ASA or the ISO just by lifting it up and by twisting it. And obviously you have to reset that to the 0 position, which is going to be this flush. Removable hot shoe. These use shoe 4. The main advantage of it is gives you a ready light in the viewfinder, a green one, and it also flashes or flickers to tell you you've got the right flash exposure. The original OM2 didn't have that. Works with the T20 and the T32 and I think the T45, but most people use the T32 or the T20. Power switch, you've got manual, which is just match needle metering, exactly the same as in the OM1. Just move the shutter selector or the aperture on the lens until you get the needle in the right position. Off is obviously off. Auto, it will show a display of shutter speeds, and a needle will indicate the shutter speed. But remember, that's not the actual shutter speed because it is a stepless shutter. So it's another one of these cameras that can choose whatever shutter speed it likes. Gives you very consistent negatives. Great if you do your own printing in the darkroom. Film rewind crank, pull up, and that opens the back. On the back here we have battery test LED. So when we move it up to the reset position up here, it's also a battery check as well. Film reminder tab holder, back opens up, pressure plate, pretty standard, metal back, easy to remove. You just drop this little catch down and the back will come off. This is a 250 exposure back on it, because again this can run at 5 frames a second with a motor drive, 1 or 2. Multi-slot take-up spool, drive sprockets, film plane, has guides top and bottom. This is obviously where your film goes. I'm going to load it today. We're going to load it with some more of that ColorPlus that I'm trying to get rid of. Battery compartment on the bottom, coupling to the motor drive. It's usually a little plate that goes over the top of that. Tripod bush, again right in the middle of the lens, which is very nice. Electric couplings for the motor drive or the winder. So this one normally lives with a winder on it. Bottom plate's metal, unlike the OM 2-digit series where it's plastic. And that is the overall view of the body. There's about 3 or 4 different patterns of this curtain. It did change through the lifetime. But yeah, it's very, very interesting in terms of its metering. And that's probably why it would be my preferred camera to use. So the lens, we just align the red dot on the lens to the red dot on the mount, and we turn it clockwise. As you've seen previously, you have all the Zuku lenses have a stop down lever on them. Aperture control is at the front. This is stop down because obviously it's blocked up, but there you go. That seems a bit slow, that iris actually. OM1s have mirror lockup, the OM2s don't. I do have one OM2 that I've modified and put an OM1 mirror lockup on it. It's quite useful to have a mirror lockup on these cameras, but they never came with it from the factory. It's a mod you'd have to do yourself. But yeah, all the lenses have a stop down lever. That iris is well sluggish, isn't it? That needs looking at. And yeah, aperture selections at the front, shutter speed selection is at the back, but with these you use them in auto and it doesn't really matter what the shutter speed's set to in auto. You can set it on anything, it doesn't really make any difference. There's no mechanical shutter speeds on it with no batteries. It is absolutely useless and it will only ever lock up. But quite often with these you'll come across them where they say, oh, the camera's locked up, doesn't wind on, etc. But if they show you a photograph where the mirror is in the up position, the chances are that it's got no batteries in it, or that the batteries are flat. So I'm going to risk it today and try and put some batteries in this one, see if there's any life in it. I have 9 of these, so I must admit I have moved on to the OM4 because its metering system is even more remarkable. These run on SR44s. Don't be confused and put the lithium based LR44s in them. They don't last hardly any time at all. SR44s are a little bit more expensive, but they'll last a couple of years quite happily. And silver's a metal, so I think from a recycling point of view that's probably a lot better than lithium. I can remember lithium at school in chemistry and it's not a particularly nice substance. I can't remember if it reacts with air or if it reacts with water, but it's certainly quite a reactive element. So yeah, it runs on batteries that are still available today. So to put batteries in it, watch this go totally wrong as usual. We have this battery cover on the back, so you get a coin, in this case it's a penny. This unscrews. I don't know if this one's got batteries in it or not. It shouldn't have because it's been in storage. It was just the first one that came to hand. My Olympus stuff is just in a total mess since I made the 100th year celebration video for Olympus. Talking of which, if you haven't entered the 100 subscriber giveaway, you've still got a chance this week to get in there. Just put a comment on that video and be a subscriber. So you can see there's no batteries in this one. So let's try and get these batteries out of here. That'll be good fun. Oh. Why do they always make these things so hard to get out? Almost got to destroy the packaging to get the battery out. Possibly should have done this beforehand, but I wanted to show you that there's been no preparation for this. I'm a bit behind on the videos this week. It's just been so busy reacting with comments and questions. It's been a very good week for comments. Right. It says positive on the outside, so positive is always this nice big end. So that's 1, that's 2. So yeah, these are made between 79 and 84, so 5-year lifespan. But yeah, they're 40 years old really, these cameras. And they normally work like a Trojan, whether this one will or not, I don't know. Battery check, there we go. So we can see, push it up to the check, it's reset the lens, and the mirrors drop down and the red lights come on. So if I stick it on auto, one of the interesting things to do with these, although I haven't got a lens cap here, when you're looking at one of these, if you're actually looking at one to buy, is to stick your hand or lens cap on and then press the shutter button, and you can hear the shutter's opened but it hasn't closed because it's so dark it's trying to work out the exposure. But as soon as you take your hand away, he says, oh, it is on F16, let's try that again. That's the shutter opening and that's the shutter closing. So it shows you that it's metering during the exposure. So it's a test I always do on OM2s when I first get them or see them. Normally put a lens cap on it, set it at a wide open aperture. This is quite dull because obviously I'm filming at night in my kitchen, and yeah, the camera should be metering during the exposure. So if you trip the shutter, you should hear it open and then you should hear it close. And this is set for quite a low ASA as well. I think the film we're putting in today is 200, but if I set it up to 800, which on this I think is as high as it goes. Yep, 800 is the highest, but obviously you can use exposure compensation to go higher. And it's fairly loud, but it's not the worst camera I've heard. I think that probably goes to the Praktica. That is an incredibly loud camera. So that's with the lens wide open. If I stop it down to 16, it gives you the longer exposure. So it's all working fine, actually. That's unusual. Things normally don't work that well for me. Right, finish up. I'll show you how you load one. So you open the back in the pull up. It will sit on its nose, this one. And we're going to be putting a roll of the old ColorPlus in there. So obviously with it in the pulled up position, you can load your film in. And you know my little tip is to rewind the film in the cassette so that you know that the film is being advanced, because as the film moves, that part will turn. So you pull that across the gate, and then got a multi-threaded spool. There isn't really a quick loading system on these, but they're not too bad to I'll put it on manual, set the shutter speed to 125th, that'll make it a lot easier. So yeah, just advance the film, and there you can see how that's gone. Just check that that's on the camera so you can see it. Yep. So let me just pull that film back. Once we've got it advanced enough, don't know what the light seals are like in this one. It would be the black tape on it again, just like we always do with them when we're not sure. And fire. 1, 2, 3, and that's it ready for the first shot. Showing one on there. So on this camera, it looks like you advance it twice. This is 200 ISO, so we lift this dial up. Oh, it goes to 1600, sorry. I never used to use films that fast. I always used to shoot on FP4 or HP5. And this is 200, 160, 200. Make sure that lines up with the mark on there. I can't find my TTL connector 4, but when I can find it, I will do a flash demonstration using a T32. Basically replace this shoe with a different type of connector that you can plug a cable into, and the cable goes between the camera and the flash gun, and that gives you through the lens off the film flash readings with a remote where you can hold the flash gun to the side, because probably most of you know you should never have a flash gun sitting on the top of a camera. It's the worst possible place to put a flash gun. At least get a bracket and put it to the side or something, but yeah, you don't really want to put a flash on the shoe. So there we have it, loaded with fresh batteries and a fresh film. My camera of the day, one of my favourites. I've got near enough every OM lens, and they are good quality. They're not really regarded as being like Leicas or Voigtlanders or Zeiss or anything, but they are very, very good lenses. I've got a 1.4, which is the one that should be on here really. This one's got quite a slow iris on it, so that needs to be looked at. But yeah, camera for today, OM2N. Questions, comments, queries down below. Like I say, if you haven't entered the prize draw for 10 rolls of HP5 Plus in either 35mm, 36 exposures, or for medium format users, 10 rolls in 120 size. Click on that video, leave a comment, make sure you're a subscriber, and the draw closes on this coming Sunday, and the result will be shown on Monday. And thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Anything I haven't covered, please let me know. Comments, questions, queries, etc. down below. Share, like, subscribe, and all that sort of stuff that people say. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.